Hello and welcome to another edition of Journalism 101 from Global News Alliance. I'm Sam Ebersole, Director of Training for GNA. And in this series, we interview working journalists who share their experience and their expertise, all of this to promote journalistic storytelling that will advance the kingdom of God. And today, we're just really excited to hear from Joe and Kathy Sindorf, a husband and wife team who have been telling stories together for longer than they've been married. In fact, their work together proves the maxim that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. If it's a math equation, it's Joe plus Kathy equals the A team, and I'll let them explain that if they want to a little bit later. We don't have time to do justice to tell you all about their accomplishments over several decades, but let the record show that they won multiple awards, Emmys, Peabodys, for a wide variety of media projects that have allowed them to travel to more than 85 countries. Their documentary project with Maasai tribesmen in a remote corner of Kenya is just a recent example of the work that they produce, working as a team, producing, writing, shooting, editing as a team. So in addition to their working for major TV networks, they also have written numerous books for various clients, several of which have been bestsellers. And I think that just goes to show that if you know how to tell a story, the medium, print, audio, video, film, whatever it is secondary. So Kathy and Joe, we're so pleased to have you. I have to also mention Kathy is a seasoned educator. Both of them are seasoned educators. Kathy achieving tenured professor status after decades of university level of instruction. And she's also served as a senior international correspondent and network news director and has extensive experience in marketing and public relations. And like I said, that is just the tip of the iceberg. But welcome you two to the program.
Thank you.
Sam, thank you. Were you talking about us?
Well, like I said, I didn't even get to the all of it, but yes, I was talking about you. But let's cut to the chase.
With you, bro.
Oh, thank you. Let's cut to the chase with the obvious question that everyone, or at least I, want to know. You've worked together, sometimes under extreme conditions, and you're still married and in love more than 40 years later. What is the secret to your success?
That's a big question. I remember working at CBN, and back in the day, we had a variety of reporters and a host of camera people that we would work with. And Joe was one of the new guys they hired, and I wasn't too sure about him at first, but a couple of things that he did really impressed me, that he was thinking story. You mentioned storytelling. And he wasn't just thinking shots, he was thinking how to tell a story and how to be ready for that. And he was the first cameraman that I had worked with who I could sit down with and like brainstorm, think through like how we were going to actually communicate this and what the parts of the story were and who we needed to interview and how to handle it journalistically. And that was very exciting to know that he was coming from like a photographic point of view and directing, but being able to think content at the same time. And I think that was one of the first things that interested me in working with him, because we worked together, as you said, even before we started dating, quite a while, and became best friends and worked together really well. But over the years, what I've also enjoyed is that we approach things differently. We have a lot of the same kinds of skills, but we have different perspectives, and we really respect each other's point of view. We respect each other's gifts. And that, I think, has been one of the secrets to our success.
Yeah, I would agree. And let the record show Kathy has far more strengths than I do. She's extremely gifted as a communicator. Most people have a fear of public speaking. Kathy was born for it. She loves getting up in front of people, whether it's live in front of an audience or having a camera or a microphone in front of her. She really comes to life when it's her turn to tell the story, to to an audience, and she's so good at it. And it's been an incredible privilege to partner with her, both in life and in professional communications for 42 years. We just had an anniversary. And as Kathy said, we were working together before we were married. So that's really cool. One of the things that I really think, it took me too long to learn this professionally. It was to farm out your weaknesses, that there are some things, particularly working as a small team or as a solo one-man band, that you have to do, that you just have to do because you have to do them, and it's not one of your key strengths. And one of the cool things is that Kathy and I don't share the weaknesses. We do share some of the strengths. So yeah, it's recognize what each other's strengths are and celebrate those, use them.
And I think most people would agree that editing is not as fun as shooting. It's great to be out there in the field. It's great to be capturing the story, you know, and dragging it back. And then the real work begins. And it's, yeah, it can be painful because you're not in the field anymore. And you're, as Joe said, you can move on to other things. But I think I've always enjoyed kind of solving a puzzle. And so to me, putting a story together is really like putting a puzzle together, getting all the pieces that fit, moving them around and thinking about that, which, you know, we started out in this field back in the day when everything was linear. And it would seem like once you finally finished editing a piece, then you'd figure like, oh, now I know how it could have gone or should have gone, but you didn't get a chance to go back and do that. Well, now, you know, anything is possible. You can move things around and play with them, and until the deadline, you can try 100 different ways to make things work, which is fun.
Well, let me ask another question here. You guys have obviously worked on some big budget productions with large crews. I realize you probably have done some charity shoots with low budgets for expensive gear, but some of our viewers on this GNA Academy are, you know, low budget. All they've got is their smartphone. They might be wondering, you know, what does your experience have to share with me? And I noticed a quote on your resume, Joe. I think you said something, or on your bio, you said that you have a passion for teaching others to use the gear that they have to shoot the best photographs or capture the best video that they're capable of. And then you go on to say that you're a major proponent of using and mastering what you have until you've seriously outgrown it, even if it's just a smartphone camera. So I'd like both of you maybe to reference that. Where is the true capability for journalistic storytelling? How much of it is in your gear and your crew and your expertise, and how much of it is in your desire to tell the story? And I'll just let you take it from there.
Yeah, I fully believe that all of us as believers, we have the greatest story that there is to tell. God is actively doing amazing things all over the world. And it gives him great glory when people know what he's up to. And Kathy and I were teaching several years ago with the COICOM gathering in, was this in Honduras, Kath? Or
I think it was in Colombia.
Colombia. Yeah, I think you're right. And it was on church media. And the description of the workshop, it was a 5-day workshop. We were meeting for a couple of hours each day for 5 days in a row. And the description was that this was a course to help you increase your ability, to up your game, for people who are already working in church media or telling stories using video. And we got there, and the room was full. The people were standing at the back. There was over 100 people there. And so we like to find out who's in the room every time we're there. And so one of the first questions that I asked was, so how many of you are currently working in a church or in an organization where telling stories with video is one of your major responsibilities? And 3 people put up their hands. And I'm like, okay, maybe we have a problem with translation. So I kind of asked it again, same 3 people. And I said, well, you do understand what this course is. And I explained that. And I said, but let me just find out, how many of you would like to do that? How many of you want to gain those skills? And every hand in the place went up. And I said, okay, there's a disconnect here. So if you have that desire, then what's keeping you from doing it? And, this is Latin America. So everybody, rah, you just start shouting out, especially this one guy in the front row. He's sitting there in the front row, just, hollering out. And
we
all
don't
the
have
students,
resources. We don't have
yeah.
equipment. We don't have the money to buy it. The equipment we need. Yeah.
And so I'm like excuse after excuse. So this one guy said, okay, sir, let me talk to you. These are the excuses you've made. If those excuses were taken away, would you do this? Would you use what the equipment? Would you use the resources? Would you use the training to actually do this? He said, yes, of course. That's why I'm here. And so the Lord, I believe, put into my mind that time when Moses was at the burning bush and God gave him an assignment of what to do, to go to Pharaoh to get the Israeli people out of Egypt and back to the promised land. And he was making excuses. And so God said to him, Moses, what's in your hand? So this guy is here, in the front row. And I said, sir, just as God spoke to Moses, I'm asking you, what do you have in your hand? And he laughed and he said, I have my phone. I said, okay, how many people have a phone? Everybody puts them up. I said, okay, we are now going to change everything that we had planned and prepared to speak about for the next 5 days. We're spending the next 5 days learning how to tell stories and do it well using your phone. And so we did that. That was the first time we did that. And it was really revolutionary, not only for Kathy and me, because it allowed us to see how really whatever God puts in your hand, he put it there for a reason and it's for his use. But we also saw how it revolutionized the people and the organizations and churches that these people were working with, because it allowed them to use the same tools that the rest of the world has learned how to use so well, but use them for telling the story of what God's doing. And I really, even in that first session, we had a couple of people from the mountainous region come down to us afterwards, and they had this tiny little flip phone that had no camera on it. And they're like, how will we do it on this? And so I'm in there going through all the menus, trying to find out what, and they had a recorder, audio recorder, MP3 recorder, as one of the built-in apps on the phone. I said, okay, for you with this phone, you won't be doing it with video, but we will include how to do this just for audio, because you can tell a powerful story without pictures. Then when you upgrade and get a different phone that has a camera, you can just move on. And I really believe it. We've seen that in so many places, how people with phones can tell the story of what God's doing and do it well. And there've been lots of projects that we've worked on where we've done it with phones. There are some places where if you go in with real equipment, even if it's a DSLR or something like that, it doesn't have to be a big television camera, but even just a really nice professional camera, you will gain the wrong kind of attention, and your day can get very long really quickly. And phones, walking around in a slum, everybody has a phone, even the residents who live there, and so having a phone isn't a big deal, and you can take a lot of the images and the footage that you need to get. So I'm a real believer in using the phone you have and not letting equipment be the excuse that keeps you from doing it. You know, yes, having the latest, greatest phone gives you bells and whistles that are really nice to use. If you don't have it, don't stop doing stories just because you're waiting on God to provide you the latest, greatest iPhone or Samsung. He's giving you something. Use what you have, and when you've used that up, he's more than willing, I believe, to give you something to take its place. But first, use what he's already put in your hand.
And we use our phones, Sam. We have also DSLRs, but we don't invest a lot of money in equipment. We see from each shoot that we need, do we need to rent something? What would be the best? When we were just as you mentioned, in Kenya, in the Maasai communities, we rented small mirrorless cameras because they were even lighter and less noticeable than our DSLRs, and we're able to take those in and use them. And a funny thing happened when Joe was in Cuba a couple of years ago. He found out in his seminar that some of the people there had nicer cameras than he did that had been confiscated at the airport and been sold to them. So, it's like, it's not the equipment that's important. It's the storytelling, and it's the heart that you want to put into it. And especially these days, I think things that are too slick cause suspicion, that if it's a little bit more down to earth and authentic and real, I think people believe it better. And so it doesn't need to be ultra fancy or ultra high quality in order to capture a story that's usable.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I'm even just thinking of the parable of the talents. I mean, it's not the way it played out in the scripture, but certainly the person who had one talent, which was the least of the three, if he had invested it, if he had done the responsible thing, he would have received as much honor from the master as the one with five. So it could have gone the other way around. The one with the least could have produced the best result in the end if he had been responsible with it. So I think that's great advice for people.
Yeah, if you do nothing, you will always get the same result. Nothing.
Exactly.
God has given everybody gifts. He's given everybody resources. Some of us obviously have more resources than others. Some nations have more resources than other nations. And that's just a fact of the world of global economics. But everybody has something, and God loves to show how the foolish things can confound the wise, and the weak can overcome the powerful. And once we give him what's in our hand, that he's placed in our hand, he hasn't given us anything that isn't actually from him, so we just hold it in our hands, openly, like, here it is. You've entrusted it to me. How can I best use this for you? And do it. And at the right time, if you need a better piece of gear, God can provide that. He is not limited in providing a new phone or a new camera or a new microphone or whatever. He has all of the resources he just wants to make sure that we're, to go back to your parable, Sam, that we're being a good and a faithful steward of what it is that he has entrusted to us.
Amen. Hey, Kathy, let me ask you this. As a university professor, you're teaching media courses. I'm sure you have students who think, being a media content creator is, the ideal career. Even if that student is a Christian, if they're trying to actively determine if this profession is their calling, what do you say to them? In other words, how do you advise someone who thinks they want this to be their future? If they think God's asking them to do that, what do you encourage them to do to prepare themselves for that choice?
That's a good question. And I think that God is able to confirm all of our callings very clearly. It's an interesting time to be a journalist because news is not the same as it was even a few years ago. It's very one-sided, one direction or the other. And so I constantly call students back to being fair, objective, and balanced in their reporting, not to push a Christian agenda, but you can cover things from a Christian point of view and not to try to impose your values on your audience, but to by the people that you interview, by the way that you cover a story, to have the truth come out. And that's what I think really glorifies God. So that I have students who say to me in a news class, I don't like to listen to the news. I don't like to watch the news. It makes me unhappy. Like, well, that's what's going on in the world today. And I think there really is a need for professional Christian journalists who want to seek the truth and want to present stories in that fair and balanced and objective way. So I encourage students to develop their talents, to develop their voices, to develop their writing, their storytelling ability, to watch and listen to all kinds of news from different perspectives and be able to analyze it clearly. And then to trust God that He's going to open the doors for them. And I've seen it happen for numerous students. We taught in Kenya. I was on sabbatical a couple of years ago and taught at Daystar University for a semester. And I am still amazed at how God has opened the doors for those African students from not just from Kenya, but Daystar brings students from 10 different African countries. And they've gone back to their own countries and they're now working for the Lord and they're serving in radio and television and film. And it's really great to see how even in a country that we think doesn't have as much opportunity as the United States, still the doors can be open for them and God can lead one step at a time and give them opportunity to use their gifts for Him. So I think the way that you find your calling is in prayer and in service. And it's like if you're going to, you need to kind of move in one direction. So it's one thing to sit at home and just pray that God will show you, but it's another to get out there and start working and start doing things. And I think in the doing, God will reveal more His purposes for you.
That's great advice. And I'm just going to conclude with this thought. When I was in the Middle East and saw a Bedouin tent in the middle of nowhere that had an antenna outside of it, that I suddenly dawned on me that this profession of working in media might be something worth pursuing. It just, to me, it was when I realized how much potential there is to use this profession as a tool to spread the gospel. That's what really made me sit up and take notice. So I know you guys have been doing this for such a long time. You've done such a valuable service serving all kinds of Christian and probably secular television networks equally professionally. And you've been an example just by your work that you've done, the quality of the work that you've done, people observing your relationship, working together. I think it's just been a wonderful testimony. So thank you again for sharing with our students at GNA Academy. Thank you, students, for tuning in, for watching this episode. There are more episodes like this on our channel on YouTube, so we encourage you or check out the gna.news website for more instruction on how you can become a smartphone journalist telling stories about what God is doing in your town, in your village, in your church, in your country. So thanks for being with us today, and God bless you.